tragically, very early on in the season at Monaco, Bandini died, and he and I, well, that was my first Formula One race for Ferrari, actually. Bandini died. The next race we went to was Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix, during which I think I finished third, and he took 3 cars there, one for Parks and one for Scarfiotti as well. Yes, I think I finished third. I'm not sure where they finished. We then went to the Belgium Grand Prix at Spa, and Mike Parks had a huge accident there, which basically finished his career. And at that point, I think Scarfiotti really felt that he'd had enough for the moment, because he'd lost a good mate in Bandini and Parks, and he had driven sports cars together and were good friends. So basically it left me as, having been 3 months before the junior member of the Ferrari team, suddenly I'm pretty much the only member of the Ferrari team, Formula One wise. Yes, unfortunately the 67 season, the chassis was good. Engine wise we really struggled, but it was quite reliable, and I had a number of thirds, and I think finished 4th in the World Championship or something. 68, when the car was more on the pace, had a number of poles, led a number of races, and finished very little. But the 67 season I really enjoyed, actually, because I had some great races with people like Jack Brabham. Almost every race, Jack and I seemed to end up having a ding dong, and Jack was a very, let's say, entertaining guy to race with.
Especially if you're behind him.
Yes, yes. Somewhere during the course of that, the Ford hierarchy decided there was going to be a dead heat, that was what was basically aimed at. But I'm not sure that Bruce was ever convinced about this dead heat, because if you look at he finished the race, and if you look at the photos of the finish, he's 2 or 3 car lengths in front of Ken Miles and the other one. But the fact of the matter is that we were at the point that they decided to slow everything down. We were leading. We took notice of that. The other car didn't. They actually came from being something like 40 seconds or a minute behind us, caught up very rapidly. If the slow hold station thing had stayed in place, we would have, there would never have been the controversy that there was. I was doing the Can-Am series with a Ferrari in '69, and I've always really, I was probably the only opposition that the McLaren team had. I've always actually felt that I was the only one that was going fast enough that they could slow down and play with a bit. And the Ferrari actually was a very good car, but we had all sorts of problems, reliability problems. But the interesting thing was that with a 7-litre V12, we started with a 6.3-litre multi-valve V12, and then came out with a 7-litre one partway through the season. Even with a 7-litre V12, we really couldn't compete in a straight line with the McLarens and with their big Chevys, and it took a lot of convincing the people back at Ferrari that their 48-valve V12 wasn't a match for an 8-litre stock block Chevy. Teddy Mayer came up to me and said, you know, do you want to drive our spare car in the race? And I had a bit of a think on that and thought, well, if I'd been staying with Ferrari, I guess I would have said no, but So I said yes. So I started with no practice off the back of the grid. It was a car that I think was probably more difficult to drive, funnily enough, than the Ferrari. Chassis-wise, it was quite different to the Ferrari. Had a superb engine, as I mentioned before. I think it was a car that probably, if you were driving it all the time, you would have really loved it. I would have loved to have spent more time in it. Yes. Teddy approached me at the German Grand Prix, last race I did for Ensign actually, about driving in 77 for them, or about the possibility of driving for them in 77. It certainly was tempting because they were winning that year. They were winning that 76 year, and to get into a winning car would have been nice. But I've no regrets really. I decided to stop, and I've pretty much stayed stopped as well. Really, by then I was starting to, well, I decided to stop, and my heart really wasn't fully in it anymore.
Just before I went to England, in, what was that, March 62, I went to a Harkia, and I guess Bruce hadn't got the Mazda going for Chris. It was going to be late, and so he got in the Super Squallow. Now, that Super Squallow was regarded as a dog. Even the Ferrari works drivers couldn't do anything with it at the time. And Chris got in that thing and he drove it like a 250F, you know, full opposite lock, full power. I thought, wow, this guy is brilliant. Much more so than I'd appreciated. He drove for Ferrari, drove for Matra, two of the great teams of motor racing, and survived one of the most dangerous eras in racing, and here he is today. So perhaps he wasn't unlucky, really. He was a great guy to be with, and so we used to go round to his house and play croquet, and he was quite good friends with my wife as well. He knew her, or he'd met her about the time I first met her as well, a bit long before we were married. He was always scrounging cigarettes off her. And even luckier, because when I was driving the BRM, we had Marlboro sponsorship, so I could give her the carton of cigarettes and she could lend them to Chris. But he's just a great guy to socialise with. You know, he's very laid back and easygoing. And the thing that's always struck me about Chris, he's so well educated. You know, a lot of people, particularly racing drivers, are not terribly eloquent, are they? But Chris is, he speaks perfect English and knows a lot about history. Well-educated guy. You know, no party in those days was complete until Chris had sung Danny Boy. That's his specialist song. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know what Simon Cowell would make of him, but yeah, that was part of the entertainment. 71. I wasn't totally aware of it at the time, but I guess I blew past him in the Canadian Grand Prix practice, Mosport, and apparently that really irritated me. He thought it was the worst thing could have happened. His ex-mechanic had just overtaken him. So then he charged into the pits and really had a hack at the Matra people. Just been overtaken by my old mechanic. It's about the worst thing could have happened to him. If you look at Chris's reason for leaving Ferrari, well, absolutely, it made total sense to move to a DFE. And of course, you don't know that the Ferrari engine is suddenly going to come right. Okay, so then he had that unfortunate season with March, but he was quick, wasn't he? You know, he was on the front row straight away and nearly won the Belgian Grand Prix. He has the unlucky label, and you know, Mario Andretti famously said apparently if Chris Amon became an undertaker, people would stop dying. But it really wasn't as bad as that. And okay, he led a lot of Grand Prix and the cars let him down, which is terrible because he could have been the dominant driver. And if you look at a few so near misses, Chris could have been the world champion, as Denny was. And to me, Chris was the one guy I thought could go head to head with Jim Clark and beat him. He had so much talent, so much natural talent, so quick, and that wonderful balance, you know, car control, terrific. Some people in history, say Ronnie Peterson, maybe Jochen Rindt, they had great car control reputations. I think Chris was as good or maybe better than them.